Hi, I'm Rachel.
Hi, I'm Ishmael.
And this is Help Us.
Hi, I'm Rachel.
And I'm Ishmael. And this is
Help Us.
So we've got Krystal here with us again from Canada, but the first episode we filmed with her, we wanted to talk about her products, but this episode we want to focus more on her journey with IBD. So Krystal has had Crohn's for almost 8 years.
Yes.
Almost 8 years or more than 8 years?
I guess more than 8 years now.
Yeah.
2010. You always remember when you're diagnosed.
Yep. So, yeah, we'd love to hear kind of your journey, because I know like everyone's journey is so specific and it's such an individual thing. So hearing more people's stories, I feel like a lot of people can relate to what you went through, you know, as opposed to what I've gone through. Like we've had very different journeys, but of the same kind of thing. So, yeah, you got diagnosed in 2010. How did it start for you?
So it started for me, I was sick for years before that and undiagnosed. And I think that happens to a lot of people. I didn't present with typical Crohn's symptoms. I wasn't having like diarrhea and blood and all that stuff, so it just boggled the doctors. They thought I had IBS, and
What are your symptoms?
yeah.
I probably have what you have.
And I mean, I for sure do also have IBS. I think everybody that has IBD also has IBS. So I just kind of went on kept going to the doctor, kept having stomach pains and, you know, trouble keeping food down and all this losing weight, but nothing, you know, stomach pain is so subjective that people just, I don't think they really realize like how badly in pain I actually was. So just kept getting told like, oh, it's just stress, or, you know, you have the flu, or you have a stomach virus, or whatever it was. And just things got progressively worse leading up to when I got diagnosed. And I was pretty much in and out of the emergency room once a week. At the time I didn't know it, but my bowel had completely strictured, and I wasn't able to even drink water. So I was becoming extremely dehydrated. I would just throw up water like immediately if I was trying to eat or drink anything, and really bad pain and all of that. So a lot of ER trips at the beginning, and just kind of waiting to see a GI doctor, and just on the wait list forever for that. And then, you know, once you get in, it takes forever for them to figure out and do all the tests and go through all that.
So from when you first started going to the ER, what was the time period from there until you actually saw a GI?
Probably a few months before I actually got to see the GI, and at the time that I saw him, I was kind of on an upswing and feeling a lot better. I was seeing a naturopathic doctor, and they had put me on just an elimination diet. So I was basically eating like nothing but lettuce. So of course I was feeling fine at the time, right? So, you know, when I saw the doctor, I didn't look sick. I wasn't really complaining of anything major. So, you know, they booked me in for some tests, like we'll test for celiac and things like that. And so just kind of waited for that, and then in between started getting really sick again. And then it was just like everything was taking so long to get back into the GI and see them again. So it probably all in took at least 6 months of them doing tests and waiting and trying to figure it out. And it was very hard to diagnose that I even had Crohn's disease, because when I did the scope, they couldn't get the camera even through because my intestine was so scarred.
Because of the strictures?
Yes, yeah. So they had just kind of figured by that point that I had it for many years, and it was just really scarred and kind of beyond repair at that point.
So then once you figured out what it was, what kind of plan of action was it? What did they do?
Basically, they just kind of went straight to the crazy drugs. Like, obviously, I'm sure everybody that has IBD has been on prednisone, so like that was the very first thing when you show up at the hospital. They give you a ton of prednisone. So I was just on a super high dose of that, and then they were trying to get me straight away onto the Remicade or Lixmap. So I had some other drugs that I was doing while I was waiting to get approval for that, but I just went straight into doing infusions, and I didn't really have much time to think about it or really contemplate that treatment plan because I was desperate at that point.
And so after that, was it working for you, the Remicade, or did you have to get surgeries
Not
or anything?
at all.
No?
Yeah, it didn't work at all. I did the initial infusion course that they normally do for you, and I saw no improvement, and I wasn't able to get off the prednisone at all or even lower my dose. Because as soon as I did, I would just get really sick again, and then it would be another week in the hospital. So basically, they just figured that my intestine was so scarred from years of it becoming inflamed and then going back to normal and going back and forth, that it was just scarred and it needed to be cut out and sewn up again. So then it was just kind of coming to terms with the fact that I needed surgery, and it just all happened so fast.
And how many years ago did you have your surgery then?
It was in 2010 as well.
Oh, so all of that took place in
Yes.
like the first year?
Yes. Yeah, I think from diagnosis to when I had my surgery, it was about 6 months.
Yeah.
And I was basically just waiting, like off work, sick, and like on high dose of prednisone. The Remicade wasn't working, so it was just like was just on that so that I wouldn't develop antibodies to it, but it wasn't doing anything. So it was just like this crazy cocktail of drugs and emotions and trying to come to terms with like living with a chronic illness that can't be cured, and then having to wait for surgery.
So fast forward to 8 years later now, what are you're on infusion still, or are you on any prednisone?
Yeah, no prednisone, thank God. I try to stay away from that as much as I can. Basically, after the surgery, I was in remission and was able to really kind of keep that going for the most part, with very small flares since then. And I just kept on with the Remicade because it was working, and it's almost just too scary of a thing to come off of it, because once you do, you pretty much can't go back on it. So I'm not even sure if I really need it at this point, but I'm still on it 8 years later, and just kind of supplementing with trying to eat good and using cannabis oils and cannabidiol, CBD and stuff in my daily routine to kind of just maintain and keep inflammation down.
And another part of Krystal's journey, obviously in the past 8 years, she's had 2 kids as well. And one thing that I always wondered about was what that's like if you have IBD. Is it possible to have kids? I'm sure these are questions other people have probably had too, whether they have kids or whether they wanted to have kids or whatnot. So what's it like to deal with that while pregnant? Was it difficult, or what was that journey like?
Yeah, absolutely. It was an interesting journey, because even when I first got diagnosed, it was kind of around the time that my husband and I were thinking about having kids, and then of course that had to get delayed because I was sick, and you have to be completely in remission before you even think about getting pregnant. And many of the medications you can't be on when you're pregnant, like methotrexate's one of them. It can affect the baby, so you have to be off for, I think, a minimum of 3 months, maybe even longer, before you can even start trying for a family. So it was a lot of planning, and then once I actually was pregnant, I really lucked out because in Calgary they had just opened an IBD and pregnancy clinic in the city. Yeah, so I was practically the first patient, and I got to be the spokeslady for it and everything. So I had really good specialized care, and I do believe that clinic is still operating out of the foothills. So it's just good, even if you're contemplating having a family, to seek them out, because there's just so many things that you need to plan for before even thinking about it, that it's just so much more complicated, right? So basically in my pregnancy, I kind of got the short end of the stick. Is some people do get better with their disease while they're pregnant because the baby kind of reaches their immunity and it works as an immune suppressant almost. For me, it just made me, I just felt more of my symptoms creeping up again, and I ended up having a really bad flare right before I had my first son and was hospitalized, and then it was just kind of like, you know, he wasn't gaining weight anymore because I wasn't able to eat, and it can cause a lot of issues. So you just really have to figure out the best way to take care of yourself and not worry about anything else, which isn't always easy to do, but
So were you still on infusions?
Yeah.
Like that's okay?
yeah, so they so that kind of goes back to the whole planning part of it, is because you can't have it in the third trimester because it will cross the placenta and the baby will get the medicine. So so they try to time it exactly to have your last infusion right at that period of time, like right before your last 3 months, and then I got infused in the hospital right after giving birth.
Oh.
So it's like bang, 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 bang.
Right after giving birth?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. So they, like, while you're still, like, right after birth, like, you're still in the bed, and they kind of just bring that stuff to you, or did you have to go somewhere else? Or?
Yeah, so that was very thoroughly planned as well. So I had to make sure that I brought my medication to the hospital, and then you have to like sign a bunch of paperwork and stuff to make sure that, because you're bringing in something outside, I guess, from the hospital, and I had to make sure that my doctor and my GI nurses gave me very detailed plans on how to do the infusion, because you know, these maternity nurses don't know too much about that. And then yeah, they just set me up with an IV while I was, well, I already had my IV, so they just like basically
Swapped
plugged
it
it
out.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly how it worked, and then you're off to the races.
So in the past 8 years, obviously you've been on Remicade quite a bit. What have you found with side effects? Are you still getting any 8 years later?
Yes, I feel like I'm getting different side effects now. I always had really bad joint pain and after getting the infusions done, and then I would almost have like just arthritic sort of joints for the first few weeks. I found that using the cannabis oil, or CBD in particular, because it's an anti-inflammatory, it works amazing for that. So I don't really have that problem anymore. But now I'm starting to find just more like exhaustion, like diarrhea usually like the first day or two, like just those types of symptoms are getting worse, and the skin symptoms that you kind of were talking about too is like just itchy skin, or like just things that kind of all seem to relate back to being an autoimmune type of thing.
Yeah, it's a weird like community of people with IBD, and we all have like such different stories, and like we really appreciate you coming down and telling us your story, because there's people have heard my story, people hear Rachel's story, and yours is like a different, like a completely different perspective, and different journey, and people can relate to that too. So like the more people that are willing to share their stories like you, the more other people are feeling comfortable and not feeling that stigma of like that isolation or the anxiety of it, because they're starting to see other people deal with what they deal with as well. So we really appreciate you coming down to talk to us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and if you guys like this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and make sure you watch. We post new videos every Wednesday. So thanks guys.
Thanks.
Bye.